Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morin. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Welcome to NHL Wraparound. Vic Morin and Neil Smith here with another episode. Boy, we got a great guest today. Brian Boucher, the analyst for TNT and also the color analyst for the Philadelphia Flyers, will be here to join us. We're going to talk about everything from the Philadelphia Flyers through the Eastern Conference and then switch over to the Western Conference for a while, talk about that. And of course, at the end of the show, we'll do the human side of the story, which is going to be really interesting this week. So stay tuned for that. But right now, let's hear from our sponsor.
From Howe to Hughes, from Bellevue to Bedard, we're your source for game-worn jerseys. Go to mygray.com, MEIGRAY.com to start your collection today. Get real. Get it from iGray.
Well, this week, Vic, I know you got something that's got put fire ants in your pants. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you first, your former club, the New York Rangers, they had a pretty good week, no?
Oh, did they ever?
All right. Well, five games in 7 days. They won 4, including a pair of back-to-backs, home against Jersey, flew down to Carolina for a 1-0 shutout there. And then over this past weekend, won in Pittsburgh, a 3:00 start, and then came home Sunday afternoon for a 1:00 start and beat the Islanders rather handily 5-2, actually getting stronger as the game went along. That's 22 hours in between games. Now, it seems that over in the NBA, an analyst for the Los Angeles Clippers, Brian Boucher, was really putting the league on notice, saying that it was shameful scheduling that the Clippers a week ago were in a situation where they had to play back-to-back games 22 hours apart. The scheduling was shameful and that those responsible should be embarrassed. Well, you know what? NHL teams may not like it. They may talk about it privately, but they never use that as an excuse. They just go out and play. And don't even get me started on load management, which the NBA is just notorious for. These are the NHL players that go out and they just do it. And that is something that you just got to so admire about them. And by the way, before we let the Clippers off the hook, those 2 games that they played, they were both at home.
Wow. That's something else, Vic. Well,
I got a full froth going here, so
I can see it. It's coming on. It's on your chin. I want to talk about the standings quirk in the Metro. And that is that because the team in the Metro will probably face the first place team will face the wild card, the second wild card team, could be the first wild card team if the Rangers end up ending first in the Eastern Conference. The point here is that the 2 wild card teams, the team in what we would call 7th place, which is the first wildcard team, might be stronger than the team that ends in 3rd place in the Metro. So because if it is a team from the Atlantic, for example, Tampa Bay Lightning, that ends up in the first wildcard spot, the 7th spot in the old days, that first place Atlanta Metro team will end up having to play them, and it'll be tougher. So the fans, I know the players and the teams don't buy into this stuff, but the fans might rather have their team end second in the Metro than in first. What do you think?
I think the worst thing that you could do is to actually root to play against a certain opponent, because that always seems to wind up backfiring in the end.
It sure does, especially for those of us that have no control, like the managers and the fans and the media and I guess the podcasters.
For sure. That does it for One-Timers for this week. Now let's hear from Ninsel. This One-Timer segment has been brought to you by the Ninsel Wealth Partners. Our goal is to be your primary source of financial advice. Our mission is to provide quality strategies customized to your needs. We recognize that you place your trust in our ability to help you achieve your goals. To us, there's no greater honor, and without question, there's no greater responsibility. And welcome back to NHL Wraparound. And it is now my pleasure to welcome in the analyst for TNT and NBC Sports Philadelphia, Brian Boucher. Brian, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, great to be with you guys. Some old faces, so great to talk hockey with you. Let's do it.
All right. Well, first question before we really get into the meat and potatoes here is Sunday you were in Vegas. I'm not a betting guy, but if I'm putting my chips in the middle of the table, is it you or Ray Ferraro that has logged more air miles this season for your respective outlets?
Oh, that's a good question. He's kind of he's out west there in Vancouver, so it always seems like he's in the east, and I've had quite a few East assignments, so maybe he's got me beat on the air miles. That's for sure. Yeah, no doubt. When you live in Vancouver, not easy to get anywhere on the East Coast.
All right. Well, let's start on the Flyers first. And they've had such a great season, overachieved to a certain degree, probably playing with a little bit of house money right now. But is there extra pressure on the team to now make the playoffs since they have gotten so close into the final fifth of the schedule?
I don't think so. I think this. I think the overall group understands who and what they are and where they're going. Now the players, I'm sure they've had this chip on their shoulder all year long since the start of training camp. I mean, the pundits, I don't think they thought about them. Like, they didn't even try to evaluate their team. They just assumed that they would be no good and that they would be a lottery team. And I think the players took it personally. So I think maybe the players have this wanting fight to hang in there and prove everybody wrong, to see it through to the very end. But I don't think it adds pressure for their group. I think they understand who and what they are. I think they enjoy going to the rink every day, trying to prove the people that picked against them wrong. They're in a tough stretch schedule-wise right now. I mean, in their last, they're in one game of it. So now they get 6 more against teams that are top teams in the East, whether it be the Atlantic or the Metro. So this is a tough part of their schedule. After this stretch where they get through the next 6 games, it kind of eases up, and they play Montreal a couple of times, Columbus. They do get Buffalo, though Buffalo's playing better right now. So, I mean, the schedule does ease up a little bit for them, but there's no doubt this next 6 games, they're in it. And I don't think the pressure's there. I just think that the fire in the players' belly is there. I think they want to try and prove everybody wrong. Be interesting to see how it plays out, because they got some good teams coming up.
Brian, a sort of a 2-part question, but I mean, the guys from Comcast and Keith Jones and Danny Briere, they obviously had an agenda at the beginning of the season and trying to come in and rebuild the organization. I don't even think that they could have possibly known that the Flyers would be this close to the playoffs. What about them? And I know the players always want to win. They always want to make it. The coach wants to win because it's his record on the line too. But what about the owners and Keith and Danny? I know you can't see inside their head, but where do you think they are on all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I say the big picture, those guys understand. I don't think they feel pressure. Like, I don't think they're feeling heat to get in, but they want to get in. I think we've gotten to the point now of the season where, leading up to the trade deadline, they're trying to assess where they're at, how they're going to approach a trade deadline. Are they going to be complete sellers? Are they going to try to add a little bit here and there? And I think they were a little bit of both. I mean, they were honest all along about Sean Walker and saying that if they got a first rounder for him, that they would move him. And they did that. So they were honest there. But I think these guys want to get in. I mean, at the end of the day, to me, there's a spot there to be had. I think 2 spots, actually. You could either be 3 in the Metro or one of the wild card teams. I think it's going to go 4-4 now between the Atlantic and Metro. And I think they've come this far, and I think they'd like to get in. I think it's a great learning experience for the players that are there. Some of those young guys that you're trying to, I think the initial goal was to play meaningful games in March when you started the season, and they're beyond playing meaningful games. I mean, these are big games, and I think it's critical for their development as well. And I think they recognize that if this team gets into the playoffs and wins a couple games in the first round, that experience will go well for guys like Joel Farabee and Owen Tippett and Tyson Forster and Morgan Frost and so on, Cam York. So they've come this far. I think they'd like to get in. I think just they realize they're in a tough stretch right now. They've got to find a way to get points in these next 6 games, whether they're, even if you get 1 point in those games, they're critical points. And if they do it, they could see the postseason, but there's still a lot of hockey left to play.
I have to follow that up, Brian. You being a 4-time goaltender for the Philadelphia Flyers, I got to ask you about their goaltending and a first-round pick, 22nd overall of the Flyers back in 1995. Carter Hart is gone. I don't want to talk about that. I just bring it up as factually there. What about their goaltending since their number 1 guy had to leave the team?
Sam Harrison, I think, if you look at the big picture, his year has been really positive. I don't know if anybody thought he'd play as big a role as he has up to this point, and he's been great. I mean, if you toss out a few of his earlier games in the year, I think the first 3 games he got torched in those games, and it really hurt his save percentage and his numbers. After that, he really took off, and for a long stretch there, he was up around 93% save percentage if you take away those 3 games. Now, since there's been some games, the outdoor game, the Stadium Series game. He gave up a couple of other games where he gave up and got pulled. So those numbers have come back down a little bit. But I think big picture, Sam's been very good. I think the issue right now, Neil, is that you're looking at a goaltender that really I don't think is yet to be a number 1 in the NHL. And you're getting at a point in the season where the games are extremely difficult, high intensity, a lot on the line. And I think maybe right now, this is where he could benefit from having another guy that could share the load with him. Because after all, he is a rookie, and it's not easy to play these games and go out there and give an A-quality start if you play 14 and 15. So I think he's at a point now where maybe fatigue is starting to play a role, not only physically, but more mentally, just knowing that every game is bigger than the next. So it'll be interesting to see how he can kind of get through this stretch of 6 games. That to me is the one big test for him. I mean, it's been such a positive year for him. You'd hate to see the wheels fall off on him. You just hope that he can kind of continue to give that steady goaltending like he has for a large part of the season.
Brian, the architect of this team, at least from the coaching perspective, the man behind the bench, John Tortorella, has had to deal with a lot this year, but he built a foundation last year. He calls it the standard, doesn't like to use the word culture. And he's lost defensemen. He lost Konechny for about a half dozen games. He's had to deal with Carter Hart not being there. Is this his best coaching job ever?
I got to think it is, Vic. I mean, I haven't studied his other coaching tenures really that hard. But considering what, this group has gone through, and considering where people had them picked to start the season, he most definitely is a finalist for the Jack Adams Trophy. Whether or not he is the winner, I guess that's for others to decide, but I think he's done a masterful job, considering where this team was last year, the year prior. I mean, this team really lost its way. The identity was gone, and he's come in and he's brought it back. I mean, he's held guys accountable. He's benched quality players, young players. And to me, I think he's gotten the attention of this team. He's gotten attention to the city. And it's been fun to watch, because the one thing about this team, that I don't think people give enough credit to, is that they are fast, and they play a brand where they block shots and they play with intensity and all that. Like those are things that you're supposed to do. But when the puck transitions and they got to go the other way, they go. And they create odd man opportunities, breakaways. They go shorthanded. They're a fun group to watch. If you watch the game that they had the other night in Boston, where they were down 5-2, and yet they find a way to battle and fight, and they get it to 5-4, and they make it a game. Like this is something that we've seen time and again this year, because there's fight in this group. And I think that all starts with the coach. So, yeah, I think this has to be one of Torts' finest jobs in the National Hockey League.
And hopefully they can find a power play at some point. And maybe that's the thing that pushes them over the top, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a tough spot for them all year, no doubt.
No doubt. So we're going to swap your Flyers hat for a little bit bigger picture on the Eastern Conference. So stay with us, and we'll be back right after this. You know, Neil, Duer actually has a place within the NHL rosters this season. There is Walker Duer, who plays for the Calgary Flames.
And no, there is no runner Duer.
No, but there is a Connor Duer that plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we're not sure whether or not they actually wear Duer jeans, but you're going to want to own your own pair of Duer jeans. Just trust us, because we love these. Duer jeans are durable and flexible without sacrificing comfort or style. They are antibacterial, which means less washing, and they're made of temperature regulating fabrics for all day and all weather comfort. We know you'll love Duer jeans as much as we do. Order your own pair today. Check out Duer's flagship stores in LA or Denver, or shop online at shopduer.com/NHL fan. Right now, our listeners can get 20% off site-wide when you use our special URL, shopduer.com/NHL fan. Don't wait to get 20% off. Go now to shopduer.com/NHL fan.
Welcome back to the Wraparound, where our guest is Brian Boucher, the Philadelphia Flyers analyst, along with TNT. And Brian, your Philadelphia Flyers that you concentrate on mostly are in a battle, as we talked about, a playoff battle. But it is a remarkable what's coming up behind them. When you think about the Tampa Bay Lightning, Detroit Red Wings, Washington Capitals, and the Islanders are hanging in there. I don't think, personally, Pittsburgh is still in it. They may think so, though. But where do you see all this shaking out? I mean, I know you have to have a crystal ball at this point, but who do you like and to get into those final two spots?
Well, I think for me, Tampa, you can't bet against them, right? With, the quality goaltender they have in Andre Vasilevsky and the guys that they've had there that have won. You got to think that they're going to find a way to get in, and I think they're playing better now. So I think Tampa gets in to that top wild card spot. The team that's surprising me the most is got to be Washington. I mean, how in the world are they still hanging in there? I mean, their goal differential is, I think they're minus 30 goal differential, yet they find ways to win. It's not the way that they used to do it, right? I mean, we talk about a power play that was so lethal for so long. That's not it. I mean, they just find ways to grind wins out. And impressive what they're doing. I agree with you. I think Pittsburgh's done. I don't see them, mounting a comeback. The Islanders do scare me. I mean, I think they're a team that, with Patrick Waugh there, I think he's found a way to get them to play a quicker game. Hard to do with, some of the aging guys that they have there, but they're hanging in there. They worry me. And as I said earlier about the Flyers, I think the thing about Philadelphia that worries me is that they got a tough stretch of games here in the next 6. And if they can find a way to grab points in those 6 games, I think they're going to find a way to get in. If they go, say they go 0-6 in the next 6 against the top end teams, it's, I think teams like Washington and the Islanders are going to find ways to get in. Detroit is sputtering, and the game against Pittsburgh the other night, I think they had 7 shots on goal in the second period at one point. So to me, this is a team that they seem like they're leaking oil. I can't imagine that they would regroup and get it together. I think Washington, the Islanders, and the Flyers are the 3 teams that I think are going to battle it out for the final 2 spots. Whether one gets a third place Metro, one gets a wild card, we shall see. But it'll be interesting to watch down the stretch.
Brian, Neil and I opened our show discussing this, and there appears to be a little bit of a quirk going on, especially within the Metro division. And because of the positioning, would either the Rangers or Carolina actually be better off finishing second in the Metro as opposed to winning the division? And the reason I say this is that if they fall in behind either Boston or Florida, the team that wins the Atlantic, they would draw a wild card one, and that's the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah. I mean, I would worry about the Lightning for sure, for all the reasons I said before, right? I mean, they've got guys that have been there, done it. I still think, even though statistically he's not the best goal in the NHL this year, when playoffs start, the last guy I would want to face would be Andre Vasilevsky. So, yeah, I mean, that's a team that I would try to avoid. And let's face it, the one team that may get the third spot in the Metro could be a team that, just finds a way to get in. And that might be your easiest opponent. There's no doubt about that. But I've never played on a team where players or coaches or management talked about, hey, let's find a way to, cozy our way in a certain situation. I've never seen it. It might be great. It might be great fodder for fans, but the idea for teams and players and coaches is to play the best hockey you can play going into the playoffs and hope that you can ride momentum. I mean, I was on a team in 2010. We got in on the last day of the regular season in a shootout, and we were stumbling and tripping all over ourselves down the stretch. And we got in on the last day, and we found a way to play our best hockey for the next 2 months. And we fell 2 wins short of winning the Stanley Cup, but it was all timing to me, which was most important.
You talk about winning, Bouch. Let's go to the other end of the conference and talk about Boston, Florida, and the Rangers. I don't put Toronto in that grouping, and I know that all three of them have had their times when their ship has sort of gone off course for a while. But I personally, I really love Florida and the way they continued to play playoff hockey from last year's playoffs all the way through till now. But what are your thoughts on Boston, who have been very inconsistent? And then, of course, you've got the Rangers that, again, in my mind, don't look like they've got a playoff type team, but they got an excellent team, and they got Shesterkin, and he could carry them.
Yeah, I think Florida, to me, is the team that I look at in the East that I just love the way they play. They're engaged at all times. They can play it any which way you want. To me, they're built for playoffs, and they've done it all year long. They defend well. Their goaltender seems to have found his mojo again, and Sergei Bobrovsky. Ekblad is out, I believe, and that could be a bit concerning for Florida. But by and large, I mean, this is a team that early on in the year they went through those injuries, and yet didn't. I thought maybe they would struggle at the start of the year, especially with the year that they had last year. And maybe they get behind the eight ball, would make it tough to get in, but they proved me wrong. They've got a bunch of guys that just play hard and are winners to me. So yeah, to me, they're the class of the East. If I'm looking at the Eastern Conference, Boston, I think, has some inconsistencies. Like you said, I think they rely on their goaltending a bit too much. They got high end talent up at the top of the lineup. I don't know if they have enough depth when you get into the real weeds of a playoff series, and if you can find a way to shut down Marchand and Pasternak, I mean, you're probably going to have success against them. I mean, you might have a tough time getting to their goalies, but I think in the end, you find a way to win against a team like that. As you mentioned, Rangers are talented. Did they address that third line center in Wenberg? Perhaps. I don't know if they addressed the top line right wing. I mean, I would have liked a little bit more size up there. That's just my opinion. But again, great goaltending. It'll be interesting to see. I think the West is probably going to be the most exciting because of the quality of teams that are out there, and there's going to be great teams that are out in the first round. In the East, I think it might be a little bit more predictable, but if I had to pick anybody coming out of the East in the end, I got to think it's going to be Florida with the experience they gained last year and the style of play that they have. Unless they have a slew of major injuries, I just don't see that team getting beat in a 7-game series.
But Matt Rempe, suspension is ending, so he's coming in on his white horse for New York. So you just mentioned the Western Conference, and we are going to address that after this word from My Gray.
Time now for a quick shout out to our sponsor. NHL Wraparound is brought to you by MyGray, your source for game-worn jerseys. Head to mygray.com to get your collection started today. Get real, get it from MyGray. NHL Wraparound subscribers can take 10% off any hockey jersey when they order at mygray.com and use the coupon code WRAP10. Don't forget that coupon code WRAP10.
Welcome back to Wraparound, and Brian Boucher is our guest, the TNT analyst, man between the glass. I don't know how he does it. I used to do analyzing, but I'd be up in the booth. I wouldn't be down there between the benches. Brian, I want to ask you about Vegas. I know on Sunday you were there. You saw them play. They're the reigning Stanley Cup champs. I know personally from my years in the NHL that they're still the champs until somebody knocks them out, and they're always going to be a tough out in the playoffs. What do you think about Vegas?
Yeah, I can't imagine the postseason without them. I know that there's people around that team that are nervous. Like they feel like, oh man, what if they don't get into the playoffs? And I, as an outsider looking in, I'm like, are you crazy? I was like, this group is getting in. I mean, I know that they haven't played very good hockey or consistent hockey here for a while, and they've let some other teams get some life and hang around. But the moves that Kelly McCrimmon made at the trade deadline are, I mean, you talk about moves that can reshape your team. I mean, Tomas Hertl, who's out, and it sounds like he will be back before the end of the season. They're talking maybe a couple of weeks before he comes back. I mean, you talk about a big centerman that can play a puck possession game. That's a great ad for a team that's already deep at center. Noah Hannafin brings another element to their back end that I think that they were missing. I mean, if you look at their defense, they were all they're big and they're station to station type players. But, you know, and a guy like Shea Theodore, he's a guy that can skate things out of trouble. He's mobile. They didn't really have another one of those guys, in my opinion. I think Noah Hannafin, they get another one of those guys. He can close on guys quick below the dots, which I think is a good ad. And Anthony Mantha is a guy that, look, I mean, he's an unrestricted free agent. He can score. He's got size. He's got hands. He should be motivated. So to me, I like getting a guy like that at this time of year that is going to be on a good team in a good situation. They could probably score some big goals for you. So to me, this team is loaded. I mean, they're loaded down the middle. They're going to have to put one of those guys at center on the wing. And to me, this is a team that understands that they're in a firearms race in the West, because there's a lot of great teams, and they knew they had to step it up if they want to have another chance to go back to back. So it'll be interesting. I think the goaltending is probably the biggest question mark for me with that club, just because I think last year Aiden Hill came in at an opportune time, did a great job. But the difference between that and starting a season, having an 82-game schedule, and the expectations and the pressures of being a number one guy, those are different pressures. And I think it's been a struggle for him. It's been a struggle for Logan Thompson, for either of them to really, grab the reins and be that number one guy. But as we get to the postseason, everybody starts buckling down and everybody starts paying attention to detail. I think those goaltenders can do what they did last year in the postseason, and that's just make the save that they have to make. I mean, they'll keep it to the outside. They'll get the goals that they need to get from their forward group. They just need to do their job, and if they do that, this is a very, very good team once again.
Jack Eichel is back in the Vegas lineup, but there's still a pretty big hole to fill with the missing captain, Mark Stone.
Yeah, that is a huge hole, and it doesn't sound like, although if fans seem to think that he's going to come back on game one of the playoffs, it doesn't sound like it to me, from what I understand, that he will be back for game one. This is a big injury, the lacerated spleen, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So it might be into the playoffs, maybe round two, but a huge loss. I mean, this is a guy that defensively does a terrific job, right? He's got a great stick. He strips pucks, a smart player, but on top of it, is a smart player offensively. I think it hurts their power play, that down low option guy that can make those plays on the goal line. Their power play has been a bit of a struggle here recently. But yeah, that's a huge loss for them. But I think that's why adding, some other guys in some other areas, maybe you can kind of, he can kind of, stem the tide for a little bit until perhaps Mark Stone gets back. But if he's out for the whole playoffs, I mean, that is a huge loss for this team because there are question marks. If Hurdle comes back, that is an if. I mean, they're hoping he is. He had a knee procedure when he was in San Jose. They think he'll be okay. But if he isn't, those trades that they made don't kind of play out the way they thought they would if Mark Stone can't come back as well.
There are some real heavyweights in the Western Conference, and to me, some of the greatest intrigue is really going for that top spot in the Central between Winnipeg, Colorado, and Dallas. And it seems like those standings change every single day. And the benefit of winning that division means that there is going to be a hell of a hockey club that goes out in the first round. Who do you like there? I mean, personally, I like Colorado having 9 of 14 games remaining on their schedule at home, and they are 26-6 in their own building. But do you see Winnipeg or Dallas really having a genuine shot to overtake them and taking that top spot?
Probably to make good podcast or good radio, whatever we call this, I should disagree with you, but I have a hard time disagreeing with you on that. I think Colorado is the team that is going to win that division, and I feel like McKinnon is league MVP. He's been all year long, in my opinion. And you're right. What's great about it is the importance to win that division, which means even though these teams are well into the playoffs, I mean, the importance of these guys finishing the season properly is great. It's great for TV. If you're covering those teams, you know that they're going to have to play good hockey down the stretch because you're right. I mean, if you're 2 or 3 in that division, that is going to be one heck of a series, and one team's going to go home after 2 weeks. That probably shouldn't go home if you were doing it from a 1-16 standpoint in the league. But I think Colorado's a team that's going to win that division. I'm still shocked at what Winnipeg has been able to do all year long. I mean, if you go back to the start of the season, the talk was about Scheifele and Hellebuck being trade chips or potentially moving on, yet they signed long-term, kind of, eases the culture there. And from there, they just keep winning it. And a couple of great ads in Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli at the trade deadline by Kevin Shoveldayoff. So they're hanging in there. They got a great goaltender in Connor Hellebuck. That's the one thing about that team that scares me is that when you have a goaltender that can play the way Hellebuck does, who's calm back there, he's big, he can steal you a series. That's what you got to worry about with the Winnipeg Jets. Dallas, yeah, they made the move for Chris Tanev, and it's a nice pickup. I just don't – that team just doesn't quite do it for me. I think there's just something just a piece missing when I look at them compared to Winnipeg and Colorado. So that's why I think Colorado's the team to beat.
Brian, last thing from me is Philadelphia Flyers West has got to be the Nashville Predators. This is a team that I personally thought, my goodness, what are they doing? Like in the summer, Barry Trotz eliminated a number of players. He brought in Andrew Burnett to be the head coach. And like the Flyers, I think a lot of people wrote them off before the season even started and said, well, they're going to be a lottery team. They're no good. And Andrew Burnett must be one heck of a coach, as is John Tortorella in Philadelphia. With what he's done with Nashville, there's got to be some secret sauce there.
Well, I think, and you're right. I mean, Barry Trotz got rid of some veterans that you thought would be, guys that could help their team still, right? Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, and yet he changes course and goes and gets Ryan O'Reilly, right? And, they got Gus Nyquist, who, how much was left in the tank there? I wasn't sure. But in Ryan O'Reilly, a guy that they got was a guy that has won before, a culture guy, and he wanted that guy to be around to show their younger kids how you need to prepare to be a pro every single day. And I think you're right. I don't think a lot of people even thought about the Nashville Predators. I think they just thought like these young guys would get more reps, more opportunity. But what they're finding out is that with confidence and, the proper leadership, being guys, even Luke Shen, I mean, I don't want to discount what Luke Shen's done. That's another guy that's been around, been on winning teams that they brought in, signed 3 years. I was like, this guy's got 3 years left in the tank. I had no idea, and and yet they've come in and they've done a nice job. And, I actually thought at one point that maybe they would be looking to trade UC Saros prior to the trade deadline and look to recoup some assets and give their first round pick from a few years ago, Askarov, a chance to come up and play, but not the case. This is a team that's found their A game at the right time of year. I think they're 8-0-2 in their last 10, and they continue to surprise a lot of people. They're getting in. They are getting in the playoffs. There's no question about it. St. Louis has made a great push here recently, but they've got a tough little schedule. I think they play Colorado on Tuesday night. That's a big game for them. See if they can keep it going. But yeah, Nashville is a team that has found a way, and Andrew Burnett did a great job in Florida in bringing out offense in his teams and got them the President's Trophy. He's got this team believing in themselves once again, and it's not just scoring. I mean, they find ways to play the right way. They check the puck back, and they do a good job. And I think they're in, and I think Brunette has to be considered in that same breath as we talked about with John Tortorella, because nobody gave those guys a sniff to start the season.
And maybe U2 comes to Nashville at the end of the season, because that was really the jumping off point, was when that trip was canceled back in February. So simply an amazing run by the Predators. And Brian, want to just thank you so much for joining Neil and I this afternoon on NHL Wraparound, and hope you'll come back again.
Yeah, I'd love to, guys. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
This is The Human Side of the Story, brought to you by UBS Financial Services Incorporated. And Neil, a little bit more on the background and the career of Brian Boucher, our guest.
For sure. And I like doing this, Vic. He's a great guy. I've known Boucher for quite a while. He's a funny guy, but he also was a really good goaltender. And we talked about, and I mentioned to him, it was number 22 in the first round pick. In 1995, he got his break in 99 when he first went to the Flyers to back up John Van Beesbroek in 99, 2000. And he actually played in a 5 overtime game versus Pittsburgh and won that game. In 02, he got traded to the Phoenix Coyotes. And of course, we all know what happened there with the Phoenix Coyotes. He established the modern day record in the NHL for the longest streak of shutouts, or time period of going without a goal scored on him. He went 5.5 games, 5.5 full games playing for the Coyotes. You wouldn't think that could happen today. In 06, he gets traded to the Calgary Flames. He's not there for very long, and he starts the next season, 06, 07, with none other than the Chicago Blackhawks. They end up putting him on waivers, and he's picked up by the Columbus Blue Jackets. And then in 07, his career, was sort of treading water, and he ended up signing with Philadelphia, but not the Flyers, the Phantoms. He signed with the Phantoms. Later that season, the San Jose Sharks had some goaltending difficulties, and they went in and signed Brian to a contract. And but guess what happened in 09? He signs back with the Philadelphia Flyers this time.
That worked out okay?
Yeah, it did. And he ends up going to the Stanley Cup final against the Chicago Blackhawks. The famous Patrick Kane goal in Philadelphia brought Chicago their first Stanley Cup since 1961. In 11-12 season, he signed with the Carolina Hurricanes. And then on January 13th, guess where Carolina shipped him to? The Philadelphia Flyers. He retired in 2013 and became a studio analyst for none other than the Philadelphia Flyers. And that's my human side of the story.
And I have to say that the 1 year that I worked with him at ESPN during the 2021-22 season, an absolute pleasure to work with, terrific guy. And it was certainly great to have him on as a guest today. So, Neil, when you and I go to UBS Arena, you're always in a suit, you're always appropriate. And I know that that's how you like people to know you, since when you were general manager of the Rangers, You were always in a suit.
I still want to be that guy when I walk in the arena that they remember. And if I go in there with a hoodie on, I don't think they're going to remember me.
Probably not. But, I think a lot of the human sides probably lean or they skew a little bit more to our more veteran audience. But this is really a message for some of our younger listeners out there. And a hard lesson that I learned pretty early on. So back in November of 1983, when I was just starting to get my foothold on some of the statistics and some of the theories that I was working on, I'd gotten wind that Scotty Bowman had an interest in this kind of information. And so I checked the league schedule and I saw that the Sabres were coming into New Jersey to play the Devils. I found out the name of the hotel that the Sabres were going to stay in. And I was going over to that hotel to meet Scotty Bowman and pitch my material to him. So I get ready to go out and I'm wearing jeans and a casual jacket, casual shoes. And my folks look at me and they said, shouldn't you be dressed a little bit nicer? Well, there is something about being young and stupid. And I walked out the door and I said, this'll be fine. So I get to the hotel and Sabres check in and here's the legendary Scotty Bowman Sabres. And they check into the hotel and he walks away from the front desk and I introduced myself and I said I had some new statistical theory that I'm working on and could I have a moment of his time? And so he invites me to come up in the elevator. And so I get in along with him and his assistant, the late Jimmy Roberts. And Roberts takes a look at me and he gives me the once over and he says, young man, you want to make it in this business, you're going to have to dress a lot better than that. Well, I never forgot that. I did have my conversation with Scotty Bowman, but really the lesson here is for everybody, especially the young people, you're going for a job, you're going for whatever, know your audience, be neat, be appropriate, dress to impress, just the way Neil Smith is every game at UBS Arena.
Thank you for that. Thank you for noticing that, Vic, because you know what? It's fun to put a suit on again. It is. I mean, you go around all day with jeans and a golf shirt on. It's nice to get dressed up.
It certainly is. Well, that will wrap up another edition of NHL Wraparound. Thanks to MyGray, UBS, Dewar, and Ninsel Financial Partners. Thanks to our listeners. Please send questions or comments to NHLWraparound@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And join us again next Tuesday as the playoff chase nears its conclusion. See you then.
Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.